As always, thank you kindly to Squarespace for continuing to support my art channel. Welcome to a relaxing sketchbook session where I try out some new materials that I got from my recent trip to Japan. I'll be trying out some of these water-based markers from this zebra clickart set and 2 sets of Tombow's Irojiten colored pencils. I picked up one of the sets a long time ago and I finally got another one, so I decided I'll try them out. I did find out that there's actually another set, I think, to complete the series that hopefully I'll get my hands on at some point. But for now, I am just using these markers to start my sketch. I haven't used this sketchbook in some time, so it was nice to pull it out. I will say that after the fact, I figured that maybe this wasn't the best sketchbook to use to try out these particular materials, because as soon as I started using the marker to sketch, I noticed that it was barely sitting on top of the surface of the paper. This paper is quite, I think, dense and it's very smooth, so the surface does not get penetrated easily by the water content in this marker, so it was kind of sitting on top of the page a lot, and I could even wipe quite a bit of it off if I did it quickly enough while I was still sketching, so that was kind of a funny experience. I do really like these pens. I think they're a nice thickness, and I'm really looking forward to using them more to sketch casually in some other sketchbooks like warm-ups and whatnot. So this particular page, I wanted to sketch actually Powder from Arcane, because I recently finished watching it along with everybody else, I'm sure, as soon as the finale premiered. And yeah, I really loved that one episode with the alternate time. I don't know if this is a spoiler to anyone. Well, I'm not really going to say anything about it, but I'm just drawing Powder from that episode because yes, that's kind of what I set out to do. And I haven't drawn in quite some time, you guys. Didn't draw at all during my trip to Japan. Unplanned, by the way. I was really hoping to have some downtime to just sketch in cafes or something while I was there, but boy, was I wrong about the pacing of that trip. Even though I was there for 2 weeks, it was like completely busy the entire time, basically. I had one day when it was kind of relaxing, but even then there was no time to sit down and draw, so I did not really touch a pen for this whole time, and so I was feeling quite rusty at the beginning of this drawing session. I mean, eventually, maybe like a half hour in or something, it felt a little bit better, but still, it was kind of difficult to get started for sure. And obviously, I didn't do myself any favors by completely bypassing using a pencil to put down a sketch, so I was just kind of winging it with these pens, but it can be good practice to do that too, so yes. For the second sketch, I decided to try a different color, as you can see, and it's really nice. So one thing I wanted to mention about this footage is that I wasn't entirely aware that the way I set up the lighting kind of made a glare on the page, because the page is so smooth and the marker is kind of shiny, and you will see that when I start using the pencils it's also a little bit shiny, so it was unfortunately not the best footage. I think it looks fine in the end. I managed to finagle with the settings a little bit to make it clearer, but it was difficult to see some parts of it. And even as you look now, the pink, it was quite a bit brighter while I was actually drawing, so it looks very light in the footage, but in reality it's actually pretty easy to see on paper, so I'm not sure why it's disappearing like that. Maybe because it's slightly fluorescent or something that can happen on camera. But anyways, yes, these markers are super nice. I would totally recommend them for quick sketching. My go-to up until now has been Tombow for this purpose. Tombow acid-free water-based markers. Still love those, obviously, but one thing I didn't like about them is like they're just so long. They kind of don't fit into any of my pencil cases. Not that it's like a huge deal, but still, it's a little weird that they're so long. And also, I did use, as much as I used both ends of the pens, I think if I had to pick one, I do really like the thin end of it. So for these pens, obviously they only have the one end, and it is thin, so I like that a lot. I like how they click. Not sure how they keep from drying out, to be honest. We'll see how they last, but I guess I picked them up from a store, and who knows for how long they were there for. So I don't know, somehow they do keep moist, I guess. Anyways, so I didn't have any plans for the sketchbook page aside from just knowing that I wanted to draw powder, and I just kind of filled out the space with a few headshots and one sort of full body that I lost interest in halfway through drawing it. But yes, it was definitely a good base to start with before I brought in the colored pencils. And before I continue with this video, I'm just going to tell you real quick about today's sponsor, Squarespace. I use Squarespace as a main website that hosts my portfolio and links to all my other social media platforms, as well as my online shop. It's been such a pleasure to add to my website from time to time because it's so quick and painless. I like to change up my logo now and then, and my latest iteration in the scrapbook aesthetic looks amazing, I think, thanks to the Squarespace template that I've been using. Adding anything to my site's navigation system and portfolio is very simple. Each element can be clicked on in the website editor to bring up the corresponding settings that you can tweak, and the automatic image scaling makes uploading images a simple one-step process. If you want to start building your own portfolio or shop website, head over to squarespace.com and get started right away for free. You can see for yourself how easy it is to make an attractive website. Head over to squarespace.com/cosmicspectrumart to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. And now back to the video. My biggest goal, I guess, with the sketchbook page was just to test out these pencils that I've had laying around for the longest time, and I was super excited to get started. It's actually a really interesting color selection. It is pretty extensive, but the way that they're divided kind of makes it difficult to, I guess, get a grip on all the different colors that are available. So that's the one complaint I would have for the set is, you kind of have to like lay them out, and then maybe if I go crazy one day and decide to go my own way and disturb the way that they were originally packaged, I would probably be better off sorting them out by color. So I could put like all the blues and maybe purples into one box, and then pinks, reds into another box or something like that. So it would be easier to just see how many different shades of colors are available, because the way that they're set up now, you'll see later in the video, I have some footage. The way they're set up is like, it's difficult to discern how many different shades you have of the same color. So I was struggling a little bit. Like, the first skin tone color I picked was way too yellow, so I had to go back and see what else there is. And surprisingly, even though my first perception was that, like, man, I'm gonna run into some problems here because there aren't really that many colors in these two sets, I was pleasantly surprised that I ended up like finding most of the colors that I needed and somehow made it work in the end. This type of process is pretty experimental to me. It's alien in a way because I actually never draw with colored pencils, and that's something that I started to realize in the midst of doing this. I was thinking to myself, like, wow, this is completely different from how I usually draw in my sketchbook. Usually I'll do some sort of line work first, or I'll put down a lot of solid colors with either ink or watercolor or markers or one of those types of wet mediums. Whereas in this case, after the initial sketch, I pretty much only used the colored pencils to finish the drawings. And for some time, I was actually pretty frustrated with the process because it's kind of new to me in a way, and I realized that I seriously don't really know how to approach it because I am so used to putting down the solid color with a wet medium first, and only then using pencils to fill in some details and like I don't know, basically clarify the whole thing. So this was a bit of an experimental situation, and it kept going back and forth. And overall, I'll just say now that when I was done with this page, I was not very happy with it at all. And like my impression going away from it was like, wow, this was something I'll never do again because I hate the results. But I will say that after I slept on it and the next morning I looked at the footage to edit, I actually was kind of pleasantly surprised. I think these drawings have a loose sort of liveliness that basically none of my other work has, because loose would probably be like the last adjective I would use to describe my work, generally speaking. I do tend to be very meticulous and make everything super clean and precise. So this was actually quite a departure from how I usually approach things, and it is therefore refreshing for me to look back on, despite the fact that I felt like I wasn't getting the results that I wanted while I was working on it. And as you can see, I was pretty relaxed with the level of finish here. There are a lot of parts I kind of left out, and in the end I think that's partially why I like the end result. It's nice to just leave some things out. It's not something I do very often. In fact, it's one of the things that is a bit of a battle for me, just like over completion of illustrations and failing to just leave some parts alone and create some respite for the eyes. Anyways, so the sketch that you're looking at me working on right now is actually my least favorite on the page. It's a tricky angle, I'll give myself that. Never been super easy for me to draw this particular angle where you can see the bottom of the chin a little bit. It's a tough one. I think in the end it's fine. It turned out okay. I managed to save it because sometime around this point I was thinking to myself, wow, is this gonna be the one to ruin the entire page? And I'm happy to report that it turned out okay, not too bad. So yeah, probably my least favorite on the page, but overall not a complete failure. And so with these pencils, like I mentioned earlier, my takeaway from this page when I was finished was that maybe it wasn't the best paper to use for pencils and these markers, just because of how smooth this paper is. So because it's so smooth, the pigment of the pencil, it takes a little bit more effort to kind of like, make it leave a mark, if that makes any sense. And I already have a bit of a problem with pressing too hard. And actually, okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. By the time I got to the second sketch, I realized that I should probably sharpen the pencils first, because in their original unused state they are sort of sharpened, but they were actually quite dull, and that's partially why I did not have the best time with them at the beginning. But then I pulled out my sharpener and I started actually using it, and that did make life quite a bit easier for me. But because they were so much sharper and thinner, at this point I started breaking them off just like regularly. As soon as I would sharpen a pencil and start using it, because I was pressing so hard, it would immediately break the tip. So that happened to me like multiple times over and over again, but that's fine. It's mostly because I think I do tend to press too hard, but also because the paper is so smooth. I think for colored pencils, maybe just a little bit of grit would go a long way for the desired results, but I digress. It still worked out pretty well. So for these pencils, I'm not sure how, I think they're a little bit more dense than the typical go-to color pencils that I use, which is I have this big Faber-Castell set of polychromos pencils. I really like those. I mostly use them on top of watercolor paper because my first few steps are using colored inks, as a lot of you guys probably know. So in this case, I'm not sure exactly what the difference is because there is no base here and the paper is so much smoother, but I think just from how they do feel quite a bit more dense to me. So there's that, but I really do like these colors. The color selection is pretty unique. I do like the way that they're organized. It's pretty neat, and I think I do want to at some point pick up the third set, so I will have the whole series to use, and I will try to use them with my typical process at some point later on. And I like how one of the sets was just neon colors. That was really cool. They look really bright in person, actually. It's always a thing where using neon colored stuff doesn't quite get captured super well on camera, but yes, in person they're very bright, so that was kind of cool. Yes, I wanted to leave a lot of real-time chunks in this video so that you guys can get a sense of the pace of sketching for me. From what I can remember, this whole entire page took about an hour and a half, and I did film it in one go, so yes. So now that the footage is coming to an end and this video is going to be done pretty soon, I just wanted to take a minute and tell you guys a couple of things that are happening right now. So there's one thing that is pretty big. 3D Total is having its biggest sale of the year, and of course they are the publisher of one of my recent art books called Prism. It is the biggest one, the most packed with things and tutorials and lots of illustrations. So if you're new here, or if you weren't able to get yourself a copy up until now, this is probably the best time to do so, because it's 20% off and will be for the rest of this week. It's like their semi-annual or annual Black Friday sale. Also, all their other art books are on sale as well, and they have so many wonderful art books, and I own many of them and go to them for inspiration all the time. And secondarily, I am also having a sale in my own shop still, probably until the end of this month, and maybe just a little bit longer, so the rest of my art books can be picked up over there. And as for what's going on with my comic, just figured I'd give you guys a quick update that at the time I'm just catching up with other tasks, but I'm basically going straight back to work on it very soon, and I am planning to start making videos about the comic process soon as well. I know a lot of you guys have been asking for that specifically, and I do have some topics that I wanted to tell you guys about. And if you actually have any topics to suggest when it comes to future videos, or like what kind of videos of mine you prefer, or questions specific to the comic, or anything you want to ask me at all, please feel free to leave a comment below, and I will read all the comments as always. And just a quick thanks to everyone who watches and comments on my videos. It means a lot to me, and I do read all of them, even though I sometimes can't respond to every single one. But yes, thank you guys so much again for supporting my channel and watching my videos. And this is the finished page. I will definitely see you soon again with another video. Hopefully it will be comic related. Thank you for watching. Bye.